How's it going, everyone? I'm Dr. Henry. Welcome to my office here in Vancouver, Washington. And today we're going to go over 3 of my favorite kettlebell exercises to build a strong, resilient low back. Stay tuned. All right, guys, I really love introducing kettlebells to people, especially people that have had a lot of low back pain. I think there's a lot of advantages. The big ones to start off with, first of all, is that you don't really need a lot of equipment. You don't need very much stuff at all. You've got your kettlebell. You can take it in your backyard. You can keep it in your office with you. You don't need very many of them. It doesn't take up very much space. It's especially handy if you've had some low back pain because I think it really teaches you how to move better through your hips, spare your low back, at the same time strengthening your low back. So I'm pumped about it. So we're gonna go through my top 3 exercises that you can start doing with the kettlebell. Let's check them out right now. All right, guys, so when it comes to the kettlebell swing, the biggest thing that we want to talk about, especially in regards to low back health, is that this exercise focuses on shifting our hips backwards versus squatting with the weight here. So that's kind of the biggest thing that we want to talk about. And the other thing too is the setup when we start off the ground. So when we start off the ground and then when we end up putting the kettlebell down, it's going to be a little bit in front of us like this. So I'm going to work on getting into this bottom position, getting some tension here and starting the swing that way. You'll see what I'm talking about. So here we go. So if you notice, I am swinging this kettlebell and I'm absorbing it by pushing my hips backwards. I'm not going to do this version right here. So I'm going to be squatting it. So I squat down and you can see this is totally different. And it's almost forcing me to catch the weight with my low back at the bottom position versus absorbing it with my hips and pushing out. And then I put the kettlebell down, absorb, and then put it down on the ground. That also keeps the person below me a little bit happier when I keep it light. All right, guys, our next exercise is going to be the goblet squat. So if you are not familiar with it, the goblet squat is just where our hands are in front of us like this, as almost as if I am holding kind of like a goblet, like an old drink. So my hands are kind of like this. My elbows are going to be kind of tight in. I'm going to be locking down my lats. And I'm going to be holding the kettlebell like this by my horns where it's kind of firmly against my sternum. You can always use a dumbbell, but this is a kettlebell video, so you can't use a dumbbell. I take that back. So here we go. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a box squat variation. So we're just kind of working on sitting backwards, kind of touching that box with your back, with your butt, and kind of standing back up. So this is just getting used to getting into this position. Maybe you have not been very familiar with squatting. This is a really great one to start with. All right, guys, our next version is going to be the actual goblet squat. So here's what it looks like. All right, guys, and this next variation I like to show to people because it requires a little bit more core and it's kind of fun to mix it up a little bit. This is called a goblet squat with a heartbeat. All right, guys, the last one we're going to go over is a single leg deadlift. And this is by far the trickiest with the other two because it's on one leg, balance comes into play. And also for a lot of people, it feels really awkward to move so much through the hips and keep that low back neutral. And this does a really great job of teaching that. So I like to start it out basically where I'll take my back of my hand, I'll put it on my low back, and I'm going to practice on my left leg here. So I'm going to pick the right leg up. I'm going to have a nice soft bend in my left knee. And from here, I'm going to think about pushing that backside heel up to the ceiling, keeping my low back nice and neutral, and just bending all through this hip and coming back up. And at first, if you're not used to this, don't worry so much about depth. Depth will come, and you'll start getting more comfortable in this position. Your balance will improve a little bit. If you need to hold on and touch a wall or something at first, that's totally fine. But really work on grooving this pattern before you add depth and before you add weight. Just work on it here a little bit. I think it teaches a lot of really great skills that can help prevent low back pain from coming later. All right, guys, next thing we're gonna do, we're gonna add a little bit of weight to it. So I'm gonna pick up my kettlebell in my right hand. I'm gonna be standing on my left leg still. And let's start with just adding a little bit of range of motion and building from there. So don't worry about adding tons of depth, going to the floor the very first rep. Just get used to it, groove that pattern, and it will come. And remember, if you're having balance issues, one thing you can do is really kind of focus your gaze on the same spot, and that can help kind of give you a little bit more stability there. And as you can see, I'm letting the kettlebell fall straight down. I'm not reaching out with it, but I'm letting it fall straight down, and I'm just following it by rotating this hip and coming back up. Piece of cake. And a lot of times this will look really good when you start getting comfortable for it. And the big thing that I'll warn you about is really don't worry so much about the kettlebell touching the ground. You can see it if you watch me. As soon as I start reaching that kettlebell for the ground so I can tap the ground, I'm going to start bending through my low back, and it can kind of set you up for a little bit of failure. It can be a little bit debated here, but I'll say if you're coming off of a low back injury, the risk versus reward for if you should reach and touch the kettlebell to the floor is just not there for me. So maybe avoid it here. So here's what we're going to look. So I'm going to go here, and as soon as I get here, I'm kind of maxed out in my hip. And if I want to touch the floor, all that last portion is just low back. And then I'm picking it up from the ground too, using all low back. Not super comfortable. So once again, you can see it here. So don't worry so much about that last part. Depth will come. Focus on your form, getting really good with this pattern. All right, guys, go grab a kettlebell, start going through these exercises, build a strong, resilient low back. If this helps you out, if you have any questions, be sure to let me know in the comments below and subscribe to the channel. I'm about to go crank up the AC in this office, and I will see you guys next time.